Welcome to the PA Insights podcast, powered by NCCPA, where we explore the stories, experiences, and impact of PAs across the profession. Today's episode features Nguyen Park, a PA leader, genetic specialist, educator, and advocate whose work is helping advance culturally responsive care and improve health equity for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities. In this conversation, we'll talk with Nguyen about her journey into genetics, the importance of representation in mentorship in medicine, and how PAs can help address disparities through advocacy, education, and community-centered care. Let's begin. Tell us a bit about your current role and the path that sort of took you to your specialty where you are now.
Okay. So, I work in genetics. I also teach. And it started out when actually, gosh, all the way back in college, when I took my first genetics class. And I thought, oh, this is amazing. I think that as PAs, we are always trying to figure out how things work and having that insight into how the human body works at the molecular level was very exciting for me. I didn't know that PAs could work in genetics. And when I became a PA, I thought, well, that's too bad that PAs can't do work in genetics, and started out in cardiology, actually. And while I was working in cardiology, I went to my first PAEA conference. And while I was there, I met Connie Goldgar, who, after her talk, I went up to her and I said, okay, what can I do? What do we need to move this forward? And she said, well, we need some people to write some articles and, do some presentations. I said, done. Okay, let's go. And so I wrote some articles, and then she said, we have this opportunity to rewrite the PA genomic competencies. And because of my background, I always thought that genetics should be for everyone. It shouldn't be this highly specialized field where, only the most elite PAs can work in it. I thought that genetics should be incorporated into every field of medicine. And so when we were rewriting the PA genomic competencies for the PA profession, I said, let's see if we can figure out a way to retool this for primary care PAs because we want them all to be thinking about genetics, obviously. And obviously, we were all on the same page. So we rewrote the PA genomic competencies. And then I would look around for an organization that could help to promote this because at this point, it was just three or four of us who were really interested in this, and there wasn't one. So I went to AAPA and I said, what do we need to do to create an organization? They said, oh, you just have to, write this basically, all of the administrative stuff that goes into building a special interest group. I said, okay, well, that's not hard. I can do that. And so started it and then did some outreach. And then I found another amazing PA, Wesley Patterson, who started out working for a genetics lab and then went back to school to become a PA. And he works in genetics as well and had a lot of training in this. So he's the treasurer and the website person, which is great because you should not let me be building any websites. Um, and just because I just don't have the training in it, it's just one of those things that are eventually I hope to learn. But he already had the insight. So one of the ways that I lead is that I look for the people who have a passion and who are good at what they do and say, can you help me? I'm definitely not the person who's ever going to pretend to know everything. I want to find the best people and then invite them to join the team if they share the mission.
So, help walk us through what a typical day looks like for you practicing in genetics for any PAs listening who may be interested themselves but want to know more about sort of like what the day-to-day looks like practicing in that field.
I think for all PAs who work in genetics, the draw is not only the science, but the impact on patients. So, for many patients who have genetic disorders, the journey to find the diagnosis is so long. and it can be years. And it's unfortunate that oftentimes by the time we diagnose them, it's past a window where we could have deployed therapeutics or where we could have made a huge difference. It's more about how do we live with the disorder in children, especially babies. If we can find it early enough, especially when it comes to like metabolic disorders, you can change the entire trajectory of a patient's life, and not only their life but their families' lives. The amount of disability that is cut down on by finding that journey. And that's part of why I was so passionate about getting more PAs working in genetics. It's all about what we're really good at. We're good at doing a deep dive into the history. We're excellent at diagnostic physical exam. And that's what you need. You need somebody who has that curiosity to say, I want to figure out exactly what's going on with you. And I'm going to help you find the right test and find the right people and find the right specialist to be able to help you. And so it's so rewarding. I mean, if you're interested in patient care and really developing that relationship with patients, genetics is a beautiful and very rewarding place to work. On the other hand, like I said, by the time they get to genetics, by the time they get to see an actual specialist, like they've been through so many tests, they're tired. They are just, worn out from the whole, I don't know what's going on. I know that there's something wrong. Um, my child's development isn't normal. I need help. And so that's why I think that the more PAs we can get who either work in the medical genetic space or who understand how it intersects with every single area of medicine, we can make a huge difference. And that's part of why we started the Society for PAs in Genetics and Genomics.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about leadership for a second. You hold several national and state leadership roles across the PA profession. I'm curious how those positions intersect and what drives your commitment to leadership and service.
I always say that leadership actually falls upon the people who don't know how to say no. And so it comes to a point of you just do what needs to be done, and um, and if you really care about outcomes, sometimes it's the only path forward, right? If I want to make sure that there are PAs in every field who understand genetics and genomics and how it impacts upon medical care, and then I just wait around for someone else to create an organization, then I'm not really living that mission. Really, I'm not. To me, that's there's incongruence. So, and I had a great mentor. I've had great mentors along the way who have shown me what leadership can do. One of my professors in PA school seemed to do everything, and I thought I didn't know that PAs could do that. He wrote articles. He served on different state boards. He, was part of the national organization. He was, working passionately to educate PAs at all different levels. And I thought, okay, if he can do that, and he actually said, if I can do this, you can do this. And I thought that's a great model. Um, so for me, it's about taking the PA profession, which is what I've always described as the stem cell of medicine. Right? We're trained to work in every single branch of medicine, and we are team players. We're great at what we do, and we're humble, which I think is important, right? I think most PAs, when you talk to them, we never pretend to know everything, but we're willing to learn. And that makes us such valuable members of any medical team. So, knowing that, why would I not advocate for PA progress at the state level, at the local level? Why would I not try to work with students? Why would I not try to do everything I can in the national space? It doesn't matter where it is, it's just a matter of where can we create the greatest amount of impact.
So we're also having this conversation amidst AAPI Heritage Month. Do you mind sharing how your personal journey as an immigrant and a PA has helped shape your perspective on healthcare delivery?
Oh, absolutely. So, um, we came here in 1975 when Saigon fell, and we were lucky. We were one of the lucky ones. We came on an airplane and not a boat. Um, we stayed in two different refugee camps. Um, my mom is an amazing individual. Um, she basically said, "I'm going to go work in the kitchen," and I thought, well, that's a strange thing to say. But she knew immediately, if I go to work in the kitchen, we will not starve. And my father had been in a refugee camp in South Korea um, when they were invaded, and he also went to work in the kitchen at that point. And because he did, he had access to rice because all of the rest of his family developed dysentery. And if he hadn't been there, being able to get food for them, they would have died. So it's always been a matter of doing what needs to be done and um, being at the table where decisions are being made. So I think that part of that and part of trying to figure out how to make sure that we always, how can I put this? You make do with what you have, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Like at one point, it's always about problem solving, and healthcare is about problem solving at the heart of everything, right? I was 8 years old. We had my father had lost his job, and we were sleeping in our coats under blankets, all in the same room near the fireplace because we didn't have heat. So I was only 8, but I knew we were in trouble. So I came to my dad and I said, "They offer free lunch. If we all we have to do is fill out this form." And it was just such a blow to his pride. And he said, "Even if I only can give you a piece of bread with jam on it, I will always be able to provide for you. You will not starve, I promise you." So he went to work like digging ditches, literally digging ditches, laying carpet, just doing whatever he could to be able to help provide for us. And when you grow up and you see like everyone in your family working together to try to just for a common goal of survival, number one, but also um, just trying to get to a better place, that really changes your perspective on what is success.
Of course.
And yeah, yeah. And then, I was the one who spoke the best English. And so I would go to appointments and, it wasn't just my mom and dad and I, it was also my aunt and my grandmother. We had all survived together. And then my brothers and sisters came along and I was the oldest. And so somebody's got to translate and somebody's got to, navigate all of the forms that have to be filled out. So, I think making life easier for people who are trying to navigate the healthcare space is a huge goal of mine.
Yeah, I really wanna circle back to what you said about, having to kind of help navigate the healthcare system for your family at such a young age. How did that experience influence the way you approach patient care today?
I never assume anything because, on one of the missions that I did, we would have people show up and they're wearing their best clothes, and that's usually how things go, right? And so people show up and you don't know what is in their background. I never assume anything when I meet a patient. I'm careful always with language. I'm careful always to make sure that people understand. And I try to repeat things to and have them repeat back to me so that I know that they understand. I never assume they have access to resources because you don't know what they do and they don't have. Um, I think that those are the main things, but I think I'm also cognizant when they bring a child into the room because I know that that can be difficult. I mean, that can be a big burden for the child. I always try to make sure if we can speak in the same language as the person to bring in translators. I mean, luckily, I speak Vietnamese, and so, that's helpful to be able to speak the same language. I think it also creates a higher level of comfort when you come from the same community. You start off in the same place, which I think is helpful.
So, let's talk a little bit about health equity and community challenges. From your perspective, what are some of the most pressing healthcare challenges facing Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities right now?
I think that as a community, they're very similar to other communities that are under stress. COVID unfortunately exposed some more of that. I think that I don't know if you've heard of the model minority myth, but frequently the Asian community is treated as this monolith where we're all kind of painted with the same brush of, oh, they're the successful minority. But in reality, there are a lot of people in the AANHPI community who are struggling, who may be first generation, and even second generation who are still struggling. And I think that even though on the surface it looks like we may be successful, in general, that's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of mental health issues. Diabetes is rampant, cholesterol problems, coronary artery disease, you name it. There's, in almost every field. And because people are not looked at as individuals, we miss a lot of things. So things like hepatitis being more prevalent within the East Asian community, things like BMI, which we already know is a terrible predictor, or I should say, a terrible way of evaluating people. In Asian communities, it's not helpful because at lower BMIs, Asian people develop diabetes. BMI doesn't measure visceral fat, which is a better predictor, but also difficult to see. We know that statin therapy in the Japanese population and a lot of East Asian populations, like the Chinese and Taiwanese community, um, they carry genetic variants that make them less able to tolerate higher doses of statin therapy. But this differs from the South Asian community. So they're 3 times more likely to carry this variant opposed to in the South Asian community, but it's still higher than in the Caucasian community. And so, if you don't understand those nuances, you're doing a disservice to your patients. And if you don't ask, what is their background? Because you can't assume by looking at anyone where they come from, then you're definitely missing things that you can do as a patient advocate to make their outcomes better.
Mental health is another critical issue you've highlighted. You mentioned it just now. I'm curious, what are some of the cultural barriers that make those conversations difficult, and how can PAs listening help break through that stigma?
It starts with developing that relationship with your patient so that they trust you and they feel like they can talk to you about it. But it also starts with the awareness that they're not going to talk about it unless you have that relationship and unless you ask. And if you don't think about it, shame is a huge um, barrier to being able to talk about mental health issues, number one. If you have been taught all of your life that you should be strong, that you should be, just keep striving and then you'll get there, then when would you ever ask for help?
Mm.
You need someone to say some of the things you've been describing, like difficulty sleeping or trouble with digestion or um, nervousness or those types of things that you have difficulty getting up in front of people to talk, those types of things that people might come in for a solution to a specific problem, but if you get the whole picture, you could say these sound like maybe you're struggling with depression, and the first reaction is going to be, I'm fine, I'm okay. And so if the people are aware that that is true, and I think that is true for many other communities as well, but especially in the Asian community where it's shameful to not try to strive and do the best that you can because there are people back in the country where you came from who have it so much worse. Why would you complain? And so it's considered um, just just not part of what people do or think about. I think that the younger generations, people who've been here for a while, it's easier,
Hmm.
but in general, and they're not going to admit to things like um, herbal use to help to decrease their stress levels. They're not going to admit to how much alcohol they're actually drinking. They're not going to admit to smoking, which, they feel like calms their nerves. So, all of the things that we need to know that they're doing, they are going to be less likely to talk about them.
So I want to talk a little bit about now the impact of PAs in Asian health. What are some of the initiatives or collaborations you're most excited about that are already making a difference? And if you have any examples of how your organization has improved access to care or resources for patients in these communities, that'd be great to hear as well.
Sure. I think that what I'm most proud of is the team building that we've done. This huge amount of growth happened, I had students who came to me and they said, "I've never heard anybody talk about PAs in the Asian health space and actually bringing us up as a community to be aware of." And I thought, wow, these students don't have a place to belong. So I'm very excited that we've created a space where people feel seen and heard. Um, the scholarship that we've developed this year, we've given away $2,000 scholarships to amazing students. I have got an amazing board. They're fabulous. They're people who are dedicated to and passionate about our mission. They spent hours of volunteer work just helping to build out things like those collaborations. We have collaborations with a couple of different like clothing companies, with um, the PAs in Latino health, or for Latino health, they have been great mentors for us in the way that they've built things. So we've modeled a lot of what we've done on what they've done. And Robert Smith, who is the kind of the big person who originally started off with the PAs in Latino health, has been instrumental in helping us to build to where we're at. He, with Dimi Dang, who was our the president before me, were the ones who held this space until we could gather enough momentum to build to where we're at. Our social media awareness campaign got just really, really good leadership in that space in terms of getting out the word on a regular basis and hopefully creating more awareness. The other thing we're doing is creating language resources in collaboration with other organizations, to be able to develop health literature that is in the language that your patient may speak. And that's huge, right? I mean, it's more usual to find things that are in English and Spanish, less easy to find things in maybe Vietnamese or Taiwanese. And so I think that's been one of the things that I'm most proud of that we're building.
Case there are any PAs, healthcare organizations, just allies in general that are listening to this episode, how can they better support the mission you guys are doing and help expand culturally responsive care in their communities?
The number one thing is to be aware of these issues, educate yourselves. The world is a much more colorful and diverse space than we tend to think of. The other thing is, and we invite them to partner with us to uplift the next generation of AANHPI students, because our students frequently experience hardship as a first generation. They're often a population not recognized as needing support, and they'll face significant financial barriers, especially with this latest ruling from the government about student loan caps. So, to help reduce this burden and advance diversity and representation, we would love it if they could help support the PAs in Asian health Scholarship Fund. It's a registered 501(c)(3) nonprofit initiative, and that would be a great way, even if you can't, come to any events or, donating to this, even if it's $10, $20, whatever you have. If we do that across the entire profession, we could really help a lot of the students.
So I'm curious, looking ahead, what are your priorities for the next year and what does success in the future look like for your organization?
Well, we want to continue to build our mentor mentee network. I feel like mentorship is so important. It can be just really frightening to start any journey. Like, I love to hike, but mentoring is like hiking. It's that mountain can look overwhelming. And if there's someone there beside you who's been where you were before, they can help point out the trip points, what to bring on the journey, what's going to weigh you down, hold you back from getting up to the next summit. It's so much better than trying to do it alone. So the mentor mentee one is a huge one. And the other thing is increasing outreach to spread awareness around healthcare concerns in our community, such as with mental health awareness, hepatitis B, such as the work that Christina Zhang is doing in New York. To me, success looks like more members joining the family, more CME events, more in-person gatherings. I'd love for there to be more representative in each region, and then eventually for each state to host events so we can get people together to celebrate what makes our communities unique. We have a scholarship dinner at the AAPA conference, where we're going to be able to get together and get everyone, really making those connections that will help us get to the next level.
Wonderful. Our final question that I wanted to ask you, bit of closing reflection. Um, what message would you like to share with PAs and PA students who want to make a meaningful impact in advocating for health equity in the Asian communities?
I think the number one message is to find your passion and then never give up. Just, like every step can feel hard, but if you believe in what you're doing and you believe in how you're going to help the patient in front of you, and then think about impact. Can you help not just the patient in front of you, but the patient's family? Can you help their community? Can you help the greater PA profession? All of those things, everything that you do has downstream impact. And sometimes it takes getting out of the space of where it feels comfortable to a space where you can grow and increase that impact. I would say don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to reach out, because there are people who believe in the same mission that you believe in. You just got to find those people. And then once you do, you can build a great team just like we have at PAs and Asian Health. And getting that, I hate this word because people always say it, but that synergy, right? And that's the word they use in boardrooms all the time. But really, all of that energy in one space of people who want to create change, that's exciting. It can help rejuvenate you if you're tired. Because I get it, taking care of patients, it's not easy. You feel like you're battling the healthcare, giants, the insurance companies, those types of things, and all you're trying to do is make a difference for that patient in front of you. But when you have that inspiration to be able to work with others, it just helps elevate everything. So find your passion and chase it down.
Well, Wen, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk with us and to share your story. This has been one of my favorite conversations we've had on this show, so we just want to thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I have to say that I'm not a fan of talking about myself, so talking about the mission is definitely a much better replacement.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the PA Insights podcast. We want to issue a special thanks to Nguyen for sharing her perspective, leadership journey, and ongoing work to support communities through advocacy, mentorship, and equitable healthcare access. Be sure to subscribe to PA Insights wherever you get your podcasts, leave us a review, and join us next time. Thanks.